You.
Hi everyone, good morning, happy Saturday, and welcome to our third self-care session. The focus and the point of these is to, obviously, I know a lot of you have jumped on for our different sessions in our member hub, and we want to create a way for mums to connect and to survive isolation and just to hear voices that are not our children and not our husbands or our partners. But with these self-care Saturdays, we really want to go a step further, and we want to equip, and we want to inspire, and we want to empower our mums with resources, with, I know last week we had Lauren Patterson who shared very vulnerably about her mental health journey, and she speaks out about mental health and about domestic violence. So this is what the purpose of today is, and I am so excited to be able to have Dr. Jodi Richardson, who is will be sharing with us today, or we're just going to have a chat now. So I've actually known Jodi for, I think it's 23 years. So Jodi, well, back then she was Miss Forsyth. She was my high school PE teacher, and which just shows our age. But surely she was just a grad. I'm sure she was. And I feel like I just left high school, but apparently it's my 20-year reunion this year. So since that time, Jodi she's a mum of two. She's an author. She speaks about anxiety in children. She's all of the things. So I'm so excited and very honoured to have her on board. So welcome, Jodi.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks for having me. So good to be here with you.
So nice to see you. I mean, we see each other on Facebook, but
I know. It's been too long. It's been too long.
I know. So you're still living down on the peninsula, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jodi, or I should say Dr. Jodi.
That's all right, Jodi. Just call me Jodi.
As long as I have to so forget and start calling you Miss Forsyth. But yeah, thank you, Jodi. I mean, you follow what we're doing on Mums Who Wine. I'm following you, and I just think that during this time, I think it's our passion at Mums Who Wine is obviously to to empower our mums, to get them to invest in their self-care, but also manage their mental health. And I know that obviously that's something that you're very passionate about, and that's your field in terms of managing anxiety. And just for our mums to know that they're not alone, that we all go through it, especially, and that's why particularly I wanted you to get you on at the moment, because we're in a very unique situation when we're in isolation. And I know that for those that might not have even suffered anxiety before, you're probably suffering or have at some point during this time, and there's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows. So we will be talking about that. But firstly, I'd just like for you to introduce yourself and maybe share a bit of your background. I know things have changed since Peninsula School PE classes. So yeah, a bit of your journey.
Yeah, it has. And in fact, this might be new to you, Lauren, but when I was teaching, I ended up suffering with depression, and it was really difficult time for me, of course, as it is for anyone who's going through that. This is obviously my early sort of mid-20s. And what happened was I went and got some help for that, but what was discovered was that I'd had anxiety since I was a child, and it hadn't been identified, and of course I hadn't been treated for it in any way. And so I don't know if you recall, but I left to go and work for Beyond Blue. And yeah, so it was a long time ago now, but that was, I think, a real turning point for me. And as much as it was a very difficult time, and I've had postnatal depression. I have an anxiety disorder to this day. I've had PND with both kids, and I've had a lot of ups and downs, like lots of mums. And I think, that was really a turning point for me professionally, but it just took a long time. I know I watched your video the other day of you're very vulnerable, and yes, and it was I think we can all thank you for sharing your story with so much courage and honesty. And like you said, it's taken you a long time to get to where and you probably didn't even know the path. You just kept taking a step forward, and that was a bit for me too. I mean, I'm writing my second book at the moment, and I couldn't have dreamed of being able to make a difference the way I am, but I never kind of knew where I was headed. I just knew I had to keep taking steps forward to help. So that's just a really...
But that's what it's all about, isn't it? And that's like when I shared, if someone had said to me 3 years ago, even 4 years ago, that I would have quit my job as a lawyer and I'd be running my own business, focus on supporting mums, like I shared, I didn't even want to be a mother because I didn't want to affect my legal career. And then I quit, and this is what I do for a living. But as you said, you just take that step forward, and then, it opens up, and you just need to follow your passion and where you feel you're giving back, and you obviously are doing that with what you're doing now. So good on you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So you obviously went to work. So you were obviously a PE teacher, and I think geography as well from memory.
Science, chemistry.
Science. I knew it was something that I didn't do. I definitely didn't do chemistry. And so then you went to work for Beyond Blue. And how did that evolve to get you into the area that you're in now in terms of writing and speaking, and obviously you did further education?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The thread, I think, through my whole career has been teaching. I'm a teacher at heart. I always will be. And when I worked for Beyond Blue on a program which was a national schools-based initiative for the prevention of depression. And the ownership or the management of that program ended up moving to Adelaide. And it was a really devastating sort of blow, but again, just another turning point. And I was offered other roles at Beyond Blue, but I'd always had quite the passion for sport and exercise, and really felt, strongly that I wanted to go and do more studies. So I decided to go and I did an honours degree, and then I did a PhD, and I actually did those in the area of physiology, exercise physiology. And when I finished my thesis, which was 70,000 words, I know, right? I just discovered this love of pulling together puzzle pieces of information and helping them come together in a way that makes sense for people. And I just literally just decided I wanted to be a sports science writer, and started writing to magazines and saying, look, I want to write these articles for your magazines. And the magazine editors thought it was a good idea too. So I spent the next, 7 or so years writing mental health, well-being and sports science articles for a whole range of cricket, rugby, football, motorsport, and trying to bring in my view of health and well-being as well as the science to the readers. And I had a really amazing interview one day with the manager of the AFL Players Wellbeing Association, and she introduced me to a world of wellbeing science that I hadn't yet discovered. And I went ahead and did some more training in a branch of psychology called acceptance and commitment therapy. I studied the science of happiness, and I started speaking. I started the happiness retreat at the Hot Springs in Victoria here. And then one thing sort of led to another in terms of the speaking work developing. And once I met Michael Gross, he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to write the book I wish my mum had when I was an anxious kid. So he said, let's do it together. So the rest is history.
And what's the name of the book? It's Anxiety in Children, or?
Anxious is how children can turn their anxiety into resilience. Yes.
That's right, and I love that. I love resilience in all things. And one of my girlfriends is a doctor in psychology as well, and she's going to come on at some point and talk about anxiety but focus on resilience, because I think there is so much focus on, yes, you do need to focus on the anxiety, but building the resilience and, really empowering either your little people or yourself as well, and self-regulating and all of that. So that's awesome. So how long ago did you write the book?
It was published last May, so almost a year ago it was published, but it was sort of 12 months in the making before publication. And yeah, look, it's been such a help for families and for teachers as well. We wrote it in a way that would support teachers and schools as well as parents. And Michael and I, in the book, we both share about our own journeys with anxiety as well. A little, not a lot, but I think it's a different book because it's coming from two authors who have lived it and who are parents in different generations. Michael's a granddad. I'm obviously a parent of 2 primary school kids. And and so it's really practical. We share a lot of what parents and teachers can do, but the scientist in me always wants to say why you do it this way. And so we've incorporated sort of the science in a way that helps people to understand exactly what what the strategies can do from a physiological level to help improve anxiety symptoms and help kids to thrive with their anxiety and sort of turn the volume down on it as well. I can't hear you. Oh.
Don't you know sign language? We'll do some interpretive dance. I'm putting it to the test. I know the alphabet, that's it. So I think maybe starting from, obviously the purpose of this session is, to introduce our mums to you, but maybe just to equip them with a little bit. Obviously they can go away and buy the book and do some research, but I think that, anxiety in children is, I think maybe we start with children and then obviously talk about the mum's mental health, which is what our focus is. But I think at the moment in particular, I know, for example, Thomas and Billy, whilst they're, so I've got a 3 and a 6-year-old, whilst they seem really happy, and I think they're actually loving isolation because again, all of this time together, but they've been sharing a bed for like 2 weeks and they always just want to be together, and whether that is because they're sensing something going on or whatnot. But I think maybe we can just start on, share some basic things about anxiety in children, or things that maybe the mums can look for, or just something that they can take away from it.
Yeah, of course, and it's really lovely that they're connecting in that way. And just before I start, so many parents have said the way that their children are connecting and getting along, unlike ever before, is really beautiful. So I think that's quite a lovely thing that's come out of this really big challenge for us. Essentially, anxiety is the anticipation of a threat. And so when our bodies or our brains detect a threat of some kind, which is a really, really present threat at the moment, there's a reaction that starts to occur very, very quickly within milliseconds, which is trigger our fight or flight response, which is the way that we can protect ourselves from that threat. Anxiety is something that we can experience whether we think about something that worries us, whether we imagine a scenario. So whether or not the threat is real or not doesn't really matter. It can still trigger that anxiety within us. And we've got a very good reason to be anxious at the moment, because when you see me, that's a big, deep, anxious breath, because, we are in really uncertain times, and, an anxious brain is a brain that sort of always asks the question, what if, what if, what if? And gosh, the fuel for our what if questions at the moment is endless. And so I think what we're experiencing at the moment, it's really normal anxiety, because normal anxiety is, our response to a stressful situation where there's uncertainty and there's a threat that is, looming. trouble is at the moment, there's no end to it. And so with normal anxiety, like you would have known with your exams and with, you know, being in court and your first mum soup wine event and, you know, any of the mums, you know, all of the anxiety that we have throughout our lives, that normal anxiety passes when the stress passes. But a challenge at the moment is the stress isn't passing. And what can happen is, if under those circumstances, sometimes it can, for some people, and especially for those of us that have, you know, an anxiety disorder, it can elevate our anxiety and can sometimes spill over into becoming a disorder. If people are having that fight or flight response activated constantly, that's when it can start to become a bit of a problem. So, you know, for our kids, I think one of the things we can do is help them to be really reassured. If they're really little, they won't need to know much at all about what's going on. You know, when they're that little bit older, it's good to answer their questions honestly in ways that are simple and easy for them to understand, not to shield older kids in a way that makes them worry more. Sometimes what we imagine is more frightening than their reality. And I think just age-appropriate information, answer questions as they're asked. And really, this is the perfect time for us all to be practicing those strategies that we know can help to calm the brain, calm our minds, and help us to develop really good skills for life, actually, because this will pass, but other stresses will come down the road.
Yeah, awesome. And so you said strategies. So what sort of strategies do you implement, or would you recommend that our mums implement? I mean, obviously with our Self-Care Saves member hub, we've obviously created this space where we've got mindset and intention setting sessions, and we've got fitness, and we've got cooking, and we've got virtual puppers where we chat, so we've got that connection. But in terms of actually putting some strategies maybe for our children or for the mum, just to, I guess, get through this time, is there some simple strategies, or what do you do in your day?
Yeah, so I love that you were doing you're starting with the 9 o'clock workouts on us. Is it 9 o'clock workout Saturday morning?
Yeah, we had a 9 o'clock session, and we had all the kids, and it was like chaos, but it's mum life. So we do that,
yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. So obviously really passionate about exercise for my whole life, and to this day, that's something that's really made a difference for me personally, but also what we know about exercise. And it can be so fun, you know, it can be so done in so many different ways. I know you did the ninja class, did you? Was it?
Oh yeah, I did that with Thomas's class, and we also have live virtual dance classes as well, so for the mums to learn a dance routine. So we're trying to mix it up so that it's, because I agree that fitness and our fitness and mindset coach has 4-minute workouts that we upload onto the hub as well, so that, you know, even just to get your head around, I don't know if I've got half an hour or 40 minutes, you've got 4 minutes somewhere in your day. So yeah, it is important.
It's really important, and that 4 minutes, it can make such a profound difference. And the reason is because what we know is that exercise is a natural end to that fight or flight response. So we're geared up in so many different ways to protect ourselves. And what's expected to happen is that we either fight or we flee. And yet we can be so anxious, but we can be in bed, or we can be sitting on the couch or at our desks, or just playing with our kids. And then, so the natural end to it is actually to do something, to use the large muscle groups and to actually move. So even 30 seconds of exercise can help to sort of lower that stress response. And it also produces a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is the acronym for GABA-aminobutyric acid. And it's a calming neurotransmitter. It's actually something that helps to inhibit the anxiety response. So exercise is an absolute must every day. And like you say, it doesn't have to be for a long time. It could be a lovely long walk, or it could be a 4-minute, you know, dance or high intensity routine in your kitchen or your lounge.
Is that something that we can similarly apply with our children as well. And I'll get you to, we'll touch on, you know, the signs to look for with anxiety in children. But if you see them, you know, I guess in that stage, just to go, okay, we'll go for a walk or go jump on the trampoline, and from your experience, does that help calm them down?
Yeah, the very first thing that I would recommend, yeah, definitely get them moving. But before you do that, just validate for them how they're feeling. And look, our kids need that. We need that when we're feeling, you know, stressed, anxious, upset, disappointed, whatever it is. For someone to say, I get it, I know, I can see how you're feeling and I understand. And I felt like that too, and it's pretty awful, isn't it? You know, and so, you know, my kids, if they're upset, they'll say, I'm upset, and I know it's okay to be upset. So lovely hearing it mirrored back. And they comfort me too. If I'm, you know, I've had lots of Corona tears, and, you know, they put their arms around me and say, it's okay. You know, they're grade 4 and grade 6. And so, you know, so validation, that empathy, just when, if your kids are feeling worried or frightened or stressed, just, I know it's a bit scary, I understand, and that immediately lets them know, bless you, that they've been heard and that somebody sees what's happening. Yeah, definitely deep breathing as well. So we're not always in a position to sort of, I mean, we are at home, I suppose, we can do what we like when we like, but the deep breathing is another strategy. And the reason that makes such a difference is because it helps to show the part of our brain that is like our alarm, that senses danger and, you know, puts the fight or flight response into action. We can calm that part of our brain in the moment through just deep, intentional, you know, long, slow, deep breaths. And so that there are a couple of things that I get parents to do first is just I can see you really, you know, anxious. I can see you feeling worried. Let's just take some deep breaths together. For some kids, you know, they prefer to get moving, and we all know what our kids need the most. And so if you get them moving, that's going to be equally helpful. But I'd also add that, like with us, you know, our kids are the same in that we need to, we talk about strike while the iron's cold. So in between the anxious times when kids are in trouble or we're in trouble, that's practicing those breathing techniques and mindfulness strategies as well in between, so we can draw on those skills when our anxiety is high. Yeah.
So it's almost like they just come out and that's your natural reaction. So instead of sitting there with your 3-year-old that's melting down and saying take breaths because he or she already knows how to do it, then hopefully that will kick in for them and for us.
For them and for us. And you can do with younger children, you can do things like hot chocolate breaths, where you get a cup, we're blowing out our hot chocolate, or you can play games like get a ping pong ball and pop it on the table and blow it to it. I mean, we can do this in our families. We can't do this in schools, sorry, at the moment. But, you know, we can play games. You can get them to pretend they're blowing out the candles on a birthday cake. The older kids will adopt the strategy, you know, more for what the strategy is without necessarily wanting to have a bit of fun with it. But yeah, you can adapt it to the child's age, definitely.
That's awesome. One of our mums, Erin, said we blow rainbow bubbles.
Oh, yes. Yeah, beautiful. Erin, what a lovely suggestion. And that's it, you're getting out with the bubble blower, and because it's just purely the action of the deep breath and the long, slow out breath, which, yeah, so definitely bubble blowing is a winner.
Oh, that's amazing. I hadn't even thought of, like, because obviously, as I said, like Thomas, we have been putting that in because we have been noticing a few anxieties, so we've just been trying to calm him down. But like Billy, he's 3 and runs around crazy. So, but to get him to, I'm going to try that hot chocolate. That's awesome. So yeah. So I guess just little strategies like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, they really, honestly, that. Well, you know, the thing that gosh, and I do joke about this when I give a presentation, is that you know, people will say calm down, And my husband, Peter, gosh, he's been amazing through my whole journey. And, you know, but the calm downs, they just weren't doing it for me. And, you know, that's the same with, I think everyone, that calm down doesn't really cut it. You can't tell our body, we can't tell someone to calm down, but we can show our brain that we're safe, because when anxiety strikes, there's, you know, we have our nervous system and we've got sort of two branches, if you like, and one is the fight or flight and one is rest and digest. And it's the rest and digest nervous system branch that we want to activate. And so much happens when we're anxious. Our heart races, our breathing rate goes up, our blood moves from our stomach to our major muscle groups, which is why we feel sick, we get clammy, so many physical symptoms, all being switched on by nervous systems we have very little control over. But what we can control is our breath. And that's a sign to the amygdala, the alarm in our brain, that we're okay. And you can just switch the alarm off and start to, and then all of the changes that happen in our physiology will start to settle as well because of that. So the breathing is profoundly important for us all.
Yeah. Especially, and I guess at this time, it's a good time to practice it as well. So in terms of just recognizing those signs in your children, because, you know, for a lot of us, we've got school-age kids who we don't see during the day, so they might be, you know, experiencing that at school that we don't see, but obviously they're with us 24/7 at the moment. Is there certain little things that we can look out for during this time to see, just to monitor how they're coping, or anything like that, or any little triggers that go, oh, that looks like a bit of an anxiety symptom in children that we might not have previously seen?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about it is at the moment, you know, there's not a lot of research around this, but in Australia, and this horrifies me, the gap between first symptoms of anxiety and help seeking is 8 years.
Wow.
I know.
It's huge.
It's huge. And so, yeah, having that understanding of what to look for is so important. And so when we're anxious, when kids are anxious, there's a lot that goes on in our heads. There's also a lot that happens in our body. So I'll go through some of if we think about it, anxiety affects how we think, how we feel, and what we do. So I'll sort of break it up like that. So in terms of thinking, lots of worries, lots of what ifs, and catastrophic thinking, where mountains are made out of molehills. And the other, you know, obviously worries are, you know, in our mind. And so it's, I think, opening conversations where we as parents can talk about, I was a bit worried about this today, and, you know, and it just normalizing the fact that we all do worry about things, you know, obviously age appropriate and not disclosing anything that's going to cause more stress. So in terms of how we think, that's definitely, you know, what can go on for children. And worrying is a hallmark sign. So if you've got a little one that worries a lot, what I suppose I can, would you like me to sort of share a little bit about what I suggest you might do as I go through them?
Yeah, definitely. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so there's different types of thinking, and that's it's about, you know, having a crystal ball and predicting. And what I encourage parents to do is to not to necessarily even say, oh, there's no need to worry about that, but just to ask a simple question, which is it helpful? So they might say, I'm really, really worried about, it might be something to do with school, and you can say, all right, is that helpful? And the child will undoubtedly say, well, no, not really. And then you can say, all right, well, what would be helpful? Let's if you're worried about this, what can we do? What can we do to sort of, you know, move closer to getting it done, or whatever the challenge is at the time? So that's a really powerful question. And I think we do very naturally want to relieve a worry by sharing the evidence for what, all the reasons not to worry. But we know ourselves that we can worry anyway, even though we know that it's it's unreasonable or unrealistic what's concerning us. We can still be really worried. It's really good to say, is it helpful? So that's what goes on a lot in terms of thinking, in terms of how kids will feel, and us as well. I mean, my second book is called Anxious Mums.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I'll be buying that one.
Yes. So in terms of how we feel, like I was 4, I look back to, I know now as a 4-year-old when I started prep that what I had was anxiety because I had a sick tummy all the time. It was a really stressful environment for me because I was in a double class of prep. There were 53 of us. And yeah, I know, I shouldn't be legal.
Mark, who's a school teacher, or was a school teacher, is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There was a bit of anxiety, sorry.
Yeah. So it was stressful. The teachers were stressed. There was a lot of yelling and I had a sick tummy. And so in terms of the way we feel, anxiety can, like a sick tummy comes from, because we're going into a fight or flight response, our blood from our digestive system is shunted away to be used elsewhere where it's more needed, so in our arms and our legs. And so that's why we can get really sick in the stomach, have upset tummy, butterflies. Those feelings come from the movement of the blood away from the stomach and the digestion. So that's a real sign to look out for. Also, you know, we can get a little bit trembly too when we're anxious. Kids can as well, because the adrenaline that's dumped into the bloodstream, which is what causes all of the changes. We can get sweaty. So the reason that happens is because all the cooling mechanisms of our amazing body are turning on, because our body is expecting to fight or flee. So on comes all the cooling mechanisms and all the perspiration that comes with it. Kids also will feel emotional. So not just how they feel physically, but emotionally. Big emotions like anger, which can come sort of from that fight side of the fight or flight. Also lots of tears. So if kids are particularly teary or quick to anger, that can be signs as well. The amygdala, which is that part of the brain that's the alarm, is the emotional processing center. And so big emotions can come with anxiety as well. And so when it comes to, and so the breathing and the exercise and mindfulness will all help to start to relieve the physical symptoms. And lastly, anxiety impacts behaviour. And the number one behaviour that you'll see when you've got an anxious child, and we'll know it too, is avoidance. And that's, I just don't want to do it. It's something that I just don't want to go near. And that, you know, parents will probably relate to kids who maybe don't want to go to the party, or the school camp, just the overnight camp's just too hard for them because they might be still struggling with separation anxiety, or you know, going out of their comfort zone in a classroom. Those challenges sound the alarm, and avoid a behaviour that is a sign that anxiety might be present.
Can you hear me, Jodi?
Now, yeah.
Sorry, it might have been we're trying to sort the kids out. So in that situation, like you said, that the kids don't want to do something, so like they don't want to go to a party or whatever it is there some strategies, or because you, like you said, you want to validate it and things like that, do you just sort of work through the process to try and get them to, for them to come to a point where they want to? Because you don't want to push them into, I don't know, I find that hard thing, like, you know, you want to tell your children, well, no, this is, you know, they've invited you to a party, this is what you do, but also you don't want to push them into a situation which is going to increase their anxiety. So what would you recommend in those situations?
Yeah, it's a challenge for parents, and parents use their instincts, I think, a lot under these circumstances, because what we do is we obviously avoidance just perpetuates the anxiety. And so the child that doesn't go on the camp hears all about it, hears all the great things, they weren't involved, they feel more left out and are less likely to, you know, it's just a cycle that is going to be really challenging to manage down the road as well as in the moment. So what's really important, and I think this is true for all of us as humans, is that we need to know, and it's important we teach our kids that they can feel nervous or anxious or upset or worried, but actually still do what matters. And I know for so long with my anxiety stood in the way of so much, because I just, you know, and I get it. It's not just a matter of going, oh, okay, well, I just have to keep moving forward, but it's a real willingness to accept the discomfort and to know that, you know what, I can feel like this, but I can actually still do what's important. And it's about small steps as well. And so for children, we talk about what's called step laddering. So it's just about inching kids closer to the goal. And it's a great friend of mine did an amazing job with her daughter who was having problems with separation anxiety. And it's a tricky one because you're either with them or you're not. So how do you step ladder? You know, you can't you know, give them a piece of us and leave the rest behind. What she did was really clever, and what it was starting off with, I'll give you, say, 5 steps, for example. It was her going out and leaving the child at home with the dad and the brothers and sisters. So her removing herself. So starting to get that time away for a short period of time. And obviously you can adjust any of these variables. And then it was the child going to grandma's and so on and so forth. Then it was having the child sleep in a bed in a different room in the house. So just getting used to a bit of change and a bit of discomfort. Having time at grandma's so you could get picked up, you know, at 9 o'clock at night. So you're sort of stretching that time. Ultimately, what she arrived at was this idea of getting her daughter to fall asleep at grandma's, but then going and picking her up and bringing her home, which is a lot of trust in that. And the daughter did that at some houses as well, friends' houses, falling asleep and getting picked up. And ultimately, having a sleepover at Nan's, having a sleepover at friends. And that's one example of how you can kind of incrementally move a child closer, but also helping them know that, you know what, we're not expecting you to actually feel amazing about it. What we're hoping is that you can go, I know I feel anxious and I know why I feel the way I feel. I'm actually safe and I can feel a bit anxious, but I can do it anyway. And
that's awesome. Just the little, like, yeah, that's amazing. I know just when you were talking, like I, when I was younger, used to, which makes me now realize when you say the 8 years between like anxiety and getting treatment, I personally haven't ever got treatment, but I used to get really bad homesickness. So like I would be invited to sleepovers at friends' houses and I would go, and then as soon as it got nighttime and we're ready for bed, I would just bawl my eyes out and my mum would have to come and pick me up. But I think that looking back on it now was just after my mum and dad had divorced, like separated. So there was obviously a lot going on. But I think, yeah, if we had have maybe done it a bit incrementally, I probably would have been able to do it.
Yeah, and you know, that's it's looking back, sometimes we can sort of see when anxiety's played a really big role, and certainly a big change, a big emotional change in your life like that, no doubt would have really made it more challenging. If it was already a challenge, it would have just only made it more challenging. So
yeah, well, that's why I love those practical steps, and I think we all, you know, have children who, and our children are different as well. So like Thomas, for example, was, you know, staying at grandma's and he was fine, whereas Billy's okay, but he's a bit more attached to me. So, and I think it'll be interesting when the baby comes as well. So I really like that. It's just really easy strategies just to implement. So you're not like, all right, just go stay at grandma's and you can deal with it. go, okay, let's do these little steps.
Yeah, very, very much so. And, you know, we can practice it with low level experiences as well. Just that tolerating that discomfort. And, you know, gosh, I mean, I'm sure everyone's kids are the same as mine, that, you know, if they're thirsty, it's like they haven't had a drink for weeks and they've been in the middle of the Sahara and death is imminent. That's what it feels like. And so, you know, I used to say, you know, I know it's uncomfortable, but you know, I also know that you can cope with this, and I'm not buying water at the supermarket. You can wait till we get home in 7 minutes.
Yes, not paying you like $4 for a bottle of water.
Oh my gosh, and I have done it. I have done it. You know, that there are days you just go, I'm buying the bloody water because I just you know, hunger and things like that, you know, those physical kind of, you know, I mean, you know, those physical discomforts. But McKinley, our daughter, you know, I had a morning one morning before school where she can't remember the details of why, but she was really, really disappointed about something that's very upsetting for her. And we sat on the couch and had a cuddle, and I said, oh no, it's really hard, isn't it? And, you know, just had a cuddle and had a bit of a chat. And we probably sat there for nearly, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes or something. And then I said, all right, what have you got left to do this morning to get ready? And she said, I've got to clean my teeth. I said, all right, well, off you go. And she said, but I'm disappointed. And I said, you can feel disappointed and you can still clean your teeth. And she's like, okay. And off she went. And it was a real sort of moment for us, because she actually really recognized that, oh, I can, you know. And the thing is, taking action to you know, forward is so healing in so many ways for us as well. And we can take our anxiety with us, and our kids can too. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned, and I'm medicated for my anxiety. I have been since the kids were little, since I stopped breastfeeding McKinley. But, you know, I still, you know, when you're medicated for anxiety, because I have a severe anxiety disorder, you never want your medication to be at a level where you are completely, you know, disaffected by anything. And so certainly day-to-day worries, and I've identified that I've had a lot of troubles with intrusive thoughts and aspects of OCD in the past as well. Not hand washing or any rituals or anything like that, but yeah, so what I've sort of learned is that, you know, even me medicated, managing my anxiety in all of the ways that I do, there are days when I just go, you know what, I just have to take it along for the ride, and it's coming with me, and I'm going to just do what's important and what needs to be done, and then spend a bit of more time resting and recouping afterwards if necessary, because it can be very tiring.
And I think that's really powerful, Jodi. And I know that that's really the message that we've been sending across to all of our mums during this time. And and in, like, you know, one of our virtual cuppers, not the one that I shared about my journey, but was just sharing that, like, I just had a really, really bad day, and I was crying during it because it was homeschooling, and I just felt like that was just another level of, you know, what we're in at the moment. But actually, like you said, just getting I think as mums, and you could probably touch on this, being a mum and obviously being an expert in this, but as mums, we're just constantly like giving out to our family, and we're multitasking, and we're thinking of a million things that need to happen in the day. But actually recognizing, like you said, when you've got that anxiety or you've got those symptoms, even if you're medicated or whatnot, just to go, yeah, okay, like I still need to function, but I'm not having a good day. And like you said with the children, like normalizing it and recognizing it. And that day I'm like, it was just a really bad day, and I shared about it, and I ended up going for a walk and meeting this beautiful old man called Miles, and he like made my day, which was lovely. But I think, yeah, reducing that stigma and knowing that, yes, we still need to function, but it is okay to, like you said, take your anxiety with you and just know that it's just going to be a harder day today.
Yeah, and I love that you were able to do that. And isn't the kindness of strangers so powerful at the moment, more than ever?
It was so funny because, I'll tell you quickly, because I said to Mark, like, I just was not in a good headspace, and for what reason, I mean, global pandemic maybe, but like nothing really different had changed. And it was just funny how the world worked. I said to Mark, I just need to go for a drive. I need to go for a drive just to get out of here. Because, you know, I think we're all experiencing it. The walls are closing in a bit. I haven't been out in a few weeks, and obviously being pregnant, emotions are heightened. And I went to get in the car, and the bloody car battery was flat, so I couldn't even go for a drive. So I'm like, ah. So I came back inside. I'm like, anyway, there was a few expletives. So I'm like, I'm just going to take our dog Bailey for a walk. And I walked down, and this beautiful old man, Miles, came up with the same dog as Bailey. And he was just smiling because he obviously was really lonely as well, because no one's connecting. And we spoke, and we chatted, and just he told me about his grandkids. And Liz, my best friend, has just had a little boy called Miles, and he goes, "I'm Miles, by the way." And I was just, oh. And I think just looking at things which I speak a lot about, and you might touch on as well, is gratitude, and just taking that time to go, life's pretty sucky at the moment, but I'm so grateful that I just walked out and met this beautiful old man that changed my day.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I know. It can instantly lift us, and you know, and I think we're all seeking it, you know, and you know, I've got a bit of a reputation for sort of gathering in people and wherever I go, because I'm such a chatterbox. I just love talking to anyone and everyone, but never more so than before. But yeah, what you were saying about meeting Miles and your gratitude is something that I am, equally, very committed to, you know, as a person and as a parent. And I just wanted to share with you, actually, just in terms of gratitude with kids, something that can just extend the gratitude practice a little bit further. And I'll give an example of something that was really special that was gifted to us in the last week. A friend of mine is she's a beautiful baker, and she bakes for a lot of the beautiful vegan cafes and healthy cafes around the area. And anyway, I was having a really, really difficult day, and I'd gone down to get a cuppa, and I bumped into her and her husband. And anyway, I shared a little bit very, very openly about the day, and it was so lovely to see them. And she said, "I'd love to bake something for you and for you and the kids." And I was like, I find it hard sometimes to accept that kindness, but I did, and I thought that would be really divine. So she did. She baked us some beautiful gingerbread. And I asked the kids to write a thank you, and I talked a little bit first about, let's just stop and think for a moment about what it took for her to do that for us. That was, she had to create time, you know, in her day to do that. She had to sort of, you know, we've made gingerbread more times than I can count, and it's a time-consuming thing to do. And so I talked about the effort that she went to get all her ingredients and to put it all together and to roll it out and to cut it out and to cook it. And, you know, I just talked about that and then left it with them. And then sort of 20 minutes later, I said, "Look, can we just write a card to say thank you?" And the words that they expressed, you know, and even Hunter said, "Anyone who bakes us gingerbread is a friend of mine."
Anyone that can go through my stomach, that is, and that's the thing in teaching kids gratitude, even especially during this time, that there are still things to be really grateful for.
Yes.
I'm just looking at one of our beautiful mums, Stace, who is crossing to us from Hobart, and I might just unmute you, Stace, if you don't mind, because you just shared in the chat that
we've had sort of ongoing daycare issues with Noah for quite a while. Just the separation thing, but in sort of the last few months, it's gotten far worse, sort of due to a particular boy in his room, and it's kind of just hit me as you've been talking that it possibly could be when he gets so upset, because it's gone from just being, you know, sad or clingy to like screaming, and it just breaks my heart. You know, clinging at me to leave, and then he doesn't want to go, and it's kind of maybe just hit me that he does have that sick feeling, anxious feeling about going and seeing this other child that, you know, maybe not so nice and to him and things like that.
Yeah, it sounds that it's really, really difficult for him, and it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because that the child is going to be there. So it might be around just the very first thing that you can do, which is so amazing, is to be able to say, hey, this is really hard for you. Let's talk about it. How old is Noah?
He's 3.5.
He's 3.5. Yeah. So I think that will go away to, first of all, him feeling understood, and no doubt you've been so loving, and it's probably been heartbreaking for you to have to leave him. Gosh, it's so difficult. And there's something that we sort of talk about, is that behaviour is a message, and that I really love this because good, bad, or indifferent, kids are always trying to sort of tell us something, and sometimes they can't express it.
Yeah.
And so you've recognised that now, and that's really wonderful for you to be able to say, look, I can see this is really tough, and maybe come up with some ways with the staff, no doubt you have been, and with Noah as well, as to what he can do, so he feels like he's got a bit more control. Because when we have uncertainty and we don't feel like we've got any control, that can make things more challenging as well. So it's really wonderful that you've been able to sort of see that's an extra big challenge for him at the moment.
And he's definitely enjoying being at home, that's for sure. But then I obviously sort of panic about when he does have to go back, that how he'll handle it. So that's sort of, I've just been writing down a few things of just talking to him a bit more about how he's feeling and that.
And share too. I think if we can share too openly about ourselves as well, and you might even, sometimes we can stretch the truth a little, just to sort of create a little scenario that we can say, so we can show them that we can relate to what they're going through. And then no doubt you can draw on lots of experiences in your own life to say, look, I've had something similar with work, or when you were in school, and then they're like, oh, she really understands. It's nice that you've got a break for it at the moment, from it at the moment, Stacey, that you can all just.
Thanks so much, Stacey. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know Erin, who is coming to us from Warrnambool, she shared that, a similar situation, in the fact that she's got 2 little girls, and her eldest, I might just cross to you, as you've been experiencing a bit of the same thing.
Yeah. So my eldest is just gone 3, and her little sister will be 1 in a couple of weeks. And probably more or less since the Christmas break this year, she sort of started getting, when she first started going, we had to go through all of that, and it was just a matter of building up the trust with the educators, the trust that I was always coming back to get her and everything. And we got through that, and she would walk off happily. And then the start of this year, it was like the light switched on, that I wasn't going to work, and that her little sister wasn't at daycare or something else. It was, I was at home with her little sister, and all of a sudden it became that same thing, that it went from just tears and a little bit fretful as I was leaving, to full on having 2 educators actually having to pry her off me, screaming, kicking, and it got to a point where it was full blown like aggravation towards me and towards the educators who were trying to take her off me. But I would ring after half an hour and she was perfectly fine. So it was just that initial separation that was really, really hard. If Dad drops her off, not a problem. She'd walk away. So it was 100% a separation anxiety. And we've just tried to support her through that as much as we can. And obviously we've been home now for 6 weeks. So we were actually due to go on holidays just before all of this, and it got cancelled. So we've been home now for 6 weeks. And so it's only this week we've sort of started chatting about, we will have to, eventually this will stop and we will have to go back to daycare. But when we go back, your sister will be going too. So how does that make you feel? And she sort of came out with well, I'm the big sister, so I have to be the good girl. So, she's my thinker kid, absolutely my thinker kid, and I can see the big emotions and everything, and it makes me anxious. But yeah, I think we're working on things and trying to equip her now, and I think it's, as you said, it's perfect timing really to be able to work through all of this with her. So it's hard though.
It's so hard. Lauren, I'd just like to sort of make a suggestion for Erin, that incredibly hard, and we're all gifted such a sort of a pause at the moment. And one of the things that might help could be a little bit of role play. And I did this with, and you might have been already doing this, I did this with, oh gosh, both of them probably, now that I think of it. It was that we sort of had some role play where we'd sort of practice, oh right, we're going into daycare, doing the drop off. Bye, you know, kisses and hugs, and then I'd go into another room and I'd come back, oh, how was your day? You know, and I couldn't tell you what age that was, but just a little bit of that is just really reinforcing that notion that you are coming back. But also, you know, with your opportunity now to sort of really validate for her how hard it is for her, and start role playing, and also including some of the strategies. So you say, if Mummy says goodbye and you're feeling upset, why don't you just pretend to blow out the birthday candles? You know, like imagine a big birthday cake, or bring some of those ideas in, so that, because her whole system's going into overdrive, and so for her to be, you know, able to start to help herself, or through some running on the spot, or some jumping jacks, or some cartwheels outside, or something. That might be something else to sort of bring into that work that you're doing at the moment to help smooth out this transition as it happens, when it happens. Yeah.
Well, we do. She does tapping. She picked it up off an app that we do little 5-minute mindfulness things, meditations, and that with her. And kinetic tapping and things like that. And she's got her own little affirmations that I sometimes hear her walking around the house saying. And she's been dropping her dollies off to daycare and to kinder, packing them bags and taking them, and driving in the car and everything like that. So she is, I guess we've inadvertently been doing it. But yeah, she's been doing that a lot lately as well. So, and even before we started this conversation. So I think some aspect of her consciousness is saying she is actually missing it, because she is actively she's repeating things, and she's role playing things that she would do at daycare. So hopefully
That's
good. Yeah, it's my heart goes out to you. It's not forever, but it's really, really tough. And can't we all relate to that phone call back to the daycare centre, and they say, they're fine. They come good.
Billy's exactly the same. He like screams, and I just have to like throw him and go, and I know he'll be fine. But thank you so much, Erin. Thank you for sharing. And I could keep chatting about this all day. I feel like we've just really touched the surface on a lot of it. But you know, I hope just some small, like, practical things that we can be applying, you know, during this time, looking for those little signs, like Jodi said, and implementing like we said, to just sit down and validate your children, and to, you know, share, and then do the breathing, do the gratitude, and all of that. It's so powerful. And I think whilst we're home, this is the time when we can really be putting this into practice, and we can be setting our kids up and knowing when they do go back to school, or they do go back to daycare, that, you know, blow the candles out of the birthday cake, or, you know, deep breaths and things like that. So I think that's incredible. And also monitoring yourself as well, because I love the physiological side of it, and sharing about, you know, even the sick feeling, that makes sense now, because all the blood's rushing to other parts of your body, and you're like, oh, why do I feel a bit sick? So just, you know, during this time, mums who are watching now and watching later on, like, we just, you know, we need to look after each other. This is why we love having people like Jodi on, just to, you know, if we get one little nugget of information that we can use and apply in our daily lives, I think that's really powerful. And that's what we want to do, where we want to empower you, inspire you. And I hope this has helped. But Jodi, thank you so much. Like, I feel like it was just we can go so much deeper. Maybe we need to get you on again, because I've got so many questions. But yeah, we thank you for your time, and thank you for all the mums that have tuned in, and all the mums that are watching later on. And yeah, thank you so much, Jodi.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Lauren. It's so great to be, you know, supporting you and your community. And I'm now part of your community, by the way.
I did see that. So Dr. Jodi Richardson is now a Mums Who Wine member. I'm very proud. Thank you so much. And thank you for supporting us, because that's obviously, supporting us and supporting what we're doing. So it's beautiful. Well, ladies, enjoy your Saturday and do some deep breathing when the kids are like causing havoc. And we'll see you next week. We'll put the schedule up. We've got a jam-packed schedule, but enjoy. Love you guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lauren. Bye, everyone.